Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to all of you on this great June morning. It's good to have you with us for another Sunday morning of Faith in Our Hometown, our weekly conversation about things that matter to us as people of faith and as citizens of the greater Joplin area. My guest this morning is going to be talking to us about something that affects more and more and more people in our community all the time, and that's the issue of diabetes. We have kind of an epidemic kind of going on in our country where more and more people are winding up having to deal with this chronic illness. And so Nancy Orton will be my guest. She is a diabetes education person from Mercy Hospital, our sponsor, and she is here going to talk to us a little bit this morning about what we can do about all that, how we might look for it, and how we might even prevent it. So if you'll grab a cup of coffee or whatever and go light on the sweeteners, we're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute. So stick with us this morning, and we'll be right back to talk a little bit about diabetes.
Blessings and greetings of Mercy to you. My name is Anna Nichols. I am a Sister of Mercy and currently the leader of Heritage and Spirituality at Mercy International Association. I love the fact that sisters throughout time have gone where they have been called to go, and they have often picked up ministries that they never intended to pick up. 25 years ago, there were 22,000 Sisters of Mercy globally. Today we're down to about 6,200 with Sister Rock and some of the others. But despite the fact there are 6,500 or 6,200 sisters left, there is an amazing number of women and men of Mercy who are working alongside us, and that continues to expand, and for me that is incredibly exciting. So as far as National Catholic Sisters Week, I really look at the legacy that they have passed on and the fact that so many women, men, young people are living Mercy today. That really is for me what's significant.
Well, again, welcome to all of you to Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning, Nancy Orton. Nancy is the program coordinator for Mercy Diabetes Community Collaborative, and she's the diabetes educator. So hopefully you'll be able to share some of your wisdom with our viewers today about all that. So Nancy, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this.
Well, I am a certified diabetes educator for Mercy, as you said, and how I got into it actually was through a community program in 2008. I actually was working in the hospital as a nurse recruiter, had been in, well, I hate to admit how long I've been in healthcare,
okay, a while, that works.
But I started out doing some community work trying to help those who had diabetes but had no insurance to cover the care of that diabetes. And I did that for several years, about 7 years, working for Mercy, but within the community. And again, trying to help those who are either uninsured or under insured.
Right.
And then I'm still doing that, but I'm also working within the hospital itself doing diabetes education. So
yeah. So why do the numbers keep rising? What's that all about? What are you guys what are you figuring out as we go our way?
Well, you know what the research is showing is that the obesity rate is climbing significantly and has been since the 1980s, and so we've got to figure out how can we reduce that obesity rate, which can help reduce diabetes.
Okay.
As it is right now, according to statistics that were done in 2015, which is actually the latest and greatest information that we have from the American Diabetes Association, we have about 30.3 million people in the United States that have diabetes. That's 1 out of 11 adults that have diabetes, and so that obviously is quite significant because every 23 seconds somebody is diagnosed with diabetes.
Yeah, I came out on the air a couple years ago when we did a program, and I shared with the viewers that I got that for my 39th birthday, and so I just turned 58, so 19 years, and it's just one of those things that it's a chronic thing. I mean, it doesn't go away, and you don't get to ignore it. You just have to. It's part of life. And it's like any other chronic illness that, you either deal with it or it deals with you.
Yeah, it certainly does. The long-term complications of diabetes is really what we're trying to do when we're having these diabetes self-management education classes. Because as you said, it does deal with you. If you don't control the blood sugar, then the blood sugar affects really every organ within your body. And so kind of the disappointing thing, I think, for me is just seeing that the rate of diabetes self-management education classes that are the people that use the services, I should say, there's only about 5% of people who are on Medicare that actually use that service. And so that's one of the things that we're always looking at, trying to figure out, well, how can we increase the rate of education and help people understand what diabetes can do to them? And so it's kind of an ongoing thing, really, trying to figure out how can we best serve people.
Yeah. So let me just ask a couple simple questions, since you're the educator, and we've got folks out there, and we got folks out there. We've got probably some experts watching us this morning, and folks who know nothing about it. So, what is diabetes in general, and how do we? How would somebody, if they're sitting at home and maybe haven't been to the doctor in a while, how does somebody figure out whether or not that's an issue for them, perhaps?
Well, diabetes in general is a problem with the pancreas either not making enough insulin or the cells of our body not using that insulin properly. Now, insulin is necessary because insulin is that hormone that's produced by the pancreas that actually helps the sugar or glucose get into our cells so that our cells can use that as fuel. So if we don't have that fuel, then we begin to have symptoms. Two of the biggest symptoms with diabetes is frequent urination and excessive thirst. Those are kind of the classic symptoms of type 2 diabetes. And so if you have that, or sometimes just simply being tired all the time, those are things that we can often determine right off that somebody's really having some problems, and that might then cause us to do some further lab work.
Like, I'll give this a little bit of a witness to this thing, because I was 39. I was suddenly, for the first time in my life, getting up at night. And I never, used to get up at night, and I was getting up at night to have to go to the bathroom, and of course my friends were telling me it was just because I was getting close to being 40. Okay, well, I found out that they were wrong, and the reason why that was happening to me all of a sudden. Now, things that things are controlled. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. I mean, once in a while, depending on how much I've had to drink before I went to bed or whatever, because I do hydrate a lot, but that was one of those signs, and I didn't miss it. I missed it because everybody just kept telling me, "Oh, that's nothing. That's just because you're getting close to being 40." Well, it wasn't.
Not true.
Yeah, it was not. Yeah, that was one of those things. So again, and I would say, especially to our viewers who might be concerned about some of this, again, especially if there are changes. That's really one of those things to look at. Some people have gotten up to go to the bathroom every night for their entire lives, and that's nothing.
Exactly.
But if you've never done that, then all of a sudden that's one of the issues. Or, you used to never be thirsty throughout the day, and then you find yourself all the time grabbing for something because, that those kinds of changes might be indicative that there's something going on. Maybe not, but if you notice those changes, that would be one of those things that you might want to talk to your doctor about, your healthcare provider.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I hear very frequently from my patients is that when their blood sugars are high, they're just so sleepy they cannot keep their eyes open. And that's also, again, one of those symptoms that kind of throws up that red flag, just extreme sleepiness after eating a meal. Just when blood sugars go up, sleepiness unfortunately will hit.
Well, and again, that was a big deal because I was classic, adding to the problem, not eating anything in the morning, then eating a big lunch, and then after I ate a big lunch, bang, all of a sudden I was tired after lunch. And that kind of good stuff. So again, I was kind of a textbook case, even though we didn't know what something was happening at the time. But it was like, okay, here we go. So yeah, again, if you now I know that I need to eat something in the morning just to keep myself spaced out throughout the day, and so that I'm got regular fuel all the way through. But at the same time, and again, if I get up, my numbers are high. I make sure that I'm just eating mostly proteins rather than anything else. Those mornings when it's low, and if I'm at coffee and donuts, okay, I can do that. But then I got to watch what I'm doing the rest of the. It's just learning how to cope with the new reality.
Yeah, and something you said earlier is that this disease is something that it doesn't really go away, but it can be controlled if you learn how to control it. But it is kind of a 24/7 disease. It's not like our common cold that 7-10 days, boom, it's gone.
It's gone.
We feel crummy for a while, but now we're all better. Diabetes isn't like that. You have to be very much on top of what's going on and making sure that you're eating healthily, that you're exercising, trying to control weight, and really watching your blood sugars and know where you're at and know where you need to go.
Right. So like, for example, okay, so you say you start having some of these symptoms and you go to your doctor and say, well, I might be having an issue right now. I might, I've noticed these changes or whatever.
Yes.
So what's the doctor going to do? How is the doctor going to measure all that and figure out whether a person really has an issue or not?
Well, we have screening tools that we can test. We can do, actually the ADA, which is American Diabetes Association, recommends at age 45 to start doing what is called a hemoglobin A1C. And what that tells us is what the average blood glucose has been over about the last 60 to 90 days. So if it is 6.5 equal to or greater than, we know just pretty much that you probably do have some diabetes. There are other ways of testing. We can do fasting blood glucose levels. We can do a 2-hour post 75 grams oral glucose testing, and even just random blood glucose levels if it's greater than or equal to 200. Those are ways of knowing that, yes, we've got something going on. Usually we will do 2 testing just to really validate, but with a fair degree of certainty, we can tell based on those numbers.
And I can tell you, if anybody's scared about being tested or do those things, I can tell you just from, it doesn't really hurt that much. I mean, you got to get stuck, so they can draw some blood to do those kinds of things. Or maybe they'll stick your finger to measure, depending on what kind of measuring they're doing.
Yes.
But it's not too terrible, and it doesn't hurt for very long, Yeah.
Well, I usually just step on my patient's toe at the time I'm sticking, so they don't know which is worse,
it's not a
right?
problem.
So.
Yeah, it's all good. So in terms of this, and in terms of the numbers going up, what do you think are some of the steps we might take as a larger society to be helping each other, try to maybe not get to that point, or how do we help each other survive when we do get to that point?
Well, actually, what we've learned through some research, you may have heard of the Diabetes Prevention Program. That study was started in 1996, went through about 2001, and what they were trying to find out is, well, if we give medication to people, will that really do the trick? If we make some changes in diet and exercise, and generally what we found out was that they worked with about 3,200 people, and they divided them up into groups. And what they did, they had one group that they just didn't do anything with. They had one group that they gave metformin, which is a medication that helps with diabetes, just works on the liver to help it not make as much sugar. They gave 850 milligrams twice a day. And then the other group, what they did is they had them try and lose about 7% of their body weight. They had them exercise 150 minutes a day, and then they had them just eat more healthfully in terms of less fat and calories. And they tested them in about 3 years, and what they found was the lifestyle management group, they reduced their risk for diabetes by about 58%. And the group with the metformin about 31%. So it was very clear, and they've continued that study. 15 years into it, they found that, gosh, these people still have a decreased risk for type 2 diabetes just based on that healthy eating and activity.
Yeah. Well, my guest this morning is Nancy Orton. We're talking a little bit about the diabetes epidemic and what we might be able to do to forestall some of that. And we're going to talk a little bit more, especially about how we do prevention through that education after the break. But right now, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, so don't go away. And we'll be right back to continue our conversation this morning about diabetes.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
So again, thanks for joining us again this morning for Faith in Our Hometown. My guest, Nancy Orton, who is a diabetes education specialist out at Mercy. And so Nancy, thank you again for joining us. We were talking right before the break about some of the studies that were done that said that the changes in diet and lifestyle and all that stuff was a much larger success rate than those who just did medicine. I will tell you that I live on a pharmacy, okay? Because it's just the way it is. But by the very same token, I know that if I were not doing when I was trying to do it just with medicine alone versus trying to make sure that I was getting my exercise and doing my thing, it was a lot tougher to keep the numbers where they were supposed to be, you know? Yeah.
Well, once you have diabetes, it is really a matter of trying to do
all of it.
All of it is just one thing doesn't usually work,
Right.
but medication certainly will help reduce numbers. And goodness, I was reading there's 40 different branded medications that have just come out and in recent time, and so there's certainly plenty of medications to help. The interesting thing is that not every medication works for each individual.
Right,
Everybody is
exactly.
different. Everybody requires different meds, doses, kinds, all of that kind of thing. So, and exercise, that's
Yep.
different for each individual too, because it depends on if you already have complications that are associated with diabetes, such as neuropathy or numbness and tingling in your feet. You may not be able to do the same type of exercise as somebody who doesn't have that. So, with that being said, though, there is always some kind of exercise that can be done. It's just trying to find out what's going to be the right fit for that individual. And sometimes getting that guidance from either your diabetes educator or your healthcare provider, trying to figure out what's going to be the best fit.
So I'll just share with the viewers, it's a couple of things that I've been, that I've done now. So my big thing here now with weight, is weight control is, my only goal is to just keep going backwards now. It took me years to pack it all on. And I'm here to tell you that I've not always been the fine physical specimen that you see on your screen today. I'm here to tell you. But I used to weigh a whole lot more, probably about 70 pounds or so more. I didn't get on the scale when I was at my heaviest. I just didn't. I wouldn't. Okay.
Didn't want to know.
Didn't want to know, and that was not good for me in my late 20s, early 30s. I'm here to tell you. But now the goal is that each time I go to the doctor, I just want to be. I don't care whether it's a pound. Over 3 months or 6 months or whatever it happens to be. I don't care whether it's a pound, but I just keep trying to go that direction. So that's one of my goals, just trying to keep going that way. And I will tell you that everybody keep rooting for me because I'm very close to being at my college age weight at this point in time. So, I mean, I figure by the time I hit 59, I'm going to be at the same weight that I was when I was 19. That's not too bad.
That would be pretty
so
impressive.
That's kind of cool.
Yes.
Okay, so that's number one. The other thing is that I'm trying to make sure now with my exercise regime. Now I measure this in an interesting way, but my real goal right now in terms of working out is that I used to just say I'm going to go at least 3 times a week, maybe try to go 5. But that was it just depends on what the schedule was, and it's so easy to get knocked out of that with evening appointments and all that kind of good stuff because I hate to exercise in the morning. It just doesn't do it for me. I have a hard enough time praying in the morning and trying to exercise. God help us. Okay, so my goal now is to make sure that at least it's every other day throughout the month, every other day. So at least my goal is about 15 times a month. Okay,
that's pretty good.
15 times a month. At least an hour of cardio and some weight training and some things like that. So those are my 2 goals right now in terms of doing those things. Well, I'm just here to tell you that hitting my other numbers is so much easier when I'm doing those other things. If I were just taking the medicine, it wouldn't do it.
No. Well, and some interesting things about exercise is that, the information, the research that has shown that if you're working out 5 days a week for 30 minutes, so for 150 minutes a week, that's really quite beneficial. But some even more recent research came out and said, even if you do 10 minutes and then 10 minutes and then another 10 minutes, that is as effective as if you were doing those 30 minutes all at one time, which my patients usually really like to hear that because the most difficult part of that exercise is just getting started. So if goodness, if I can just get 10 minutes done, and then maybe I can do another 10 minutes, and then I can do another 10 minutes.
Yes.
The other really cool thing about exercise is that the research shows that when you're exercising on a regular basis, that exercise benefits you 24 to 48 hours.
Right. And that's
So-
one of the reasons why I'm trying to go to that,
every other-
that at least every other day, just
Yeah.
trying to make sure that it's in there, that I just don't go, because it's hard. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, just as, and I've been exercising. Well, I didn't start exercising until I was 27, so only about half my life now.
For a little while, though.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, in that if I skip 4 or 5 days, if I'm gone on a trip or something and only can do just some gentle walking and things like that, when I come back to it, it's so hard to get started again. Whereas
your
if
routine.
you get out of that routine, it's so hard to get after it again. Whereas if I just only not get after it for a day, that's not so bad. I can go back to it again the next night,
Absolutely.
and go after it and go do it. But boy, I tell you what, you skip 3-4 days and it's just like, ugh, here we go. And then you're thinking your whole time while you're doing it, God, I wish I'd have never quit. What was wrong with me?
It's motivating, though, I think, to when you're doing that exercise, and you can see that it does make a difference in the numbers, or at least that's what my patients will tell me. Once they actually get to that point of exercising on a routine basis, they can see a definite difference in their blood sugars, because what happens is our cells then are able to use our insulin
Better. Yeah.
and so those numbers come down as a result of that. And so usually once they're doing that and they see the benefit, it encourages them to continue to do some
Well,
exercise.
nothing. I don't think anything says got a motivator like success.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you get successful at something and you go in and you're like, yes, it's just like, and so again, I know, even if I'm doing, just finger sticks in the morning and looking at it, if I'd spend 3 or 4 days, numbers just start to creep up there and stay up there, and it's like, ugh, here we go, got to go do it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like you were saying earlier, if you didn't want to know before, and it's like, yeah, it's going to be too high, then I don't even want to know what it is. And
Yeah.
we
I
kind
haven't
of
done
have
it
to
with blood
reverse
sugar,
some of
but
that.
I did do it with weight.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to know.
Yeah.
That you can live in denial.
Yeah. Well, I have had several of my patients who do that with their blood sugars. Like, no, I know it's going to be high, so I'm not even going to test
Just
it.
not going to test it. Yeah.
Doesn't usually work out very well for them, though.
Yeah,
because that's
not-
usually when they end up coming to see me.
Yeah, because it's like, the
'Cause it's
things
just
are so
out of
far out of
control.
whack. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, I just want, I would hope that what we'd all want for ourselves and for each other is, happiness and some health, I think that's what, at least in my line of work, I think that's what, God's kind of trying to lead us to is wholeness.
Absolutely.
Wholeness and holiness, there's no surprise that they're kind of made out of the same words and all that kind of good stuff. So
Yes.
I think that, to be, to be of good care for our bodies, take care of what God gave us is an important thing.
Absolutely.
So what would your advice be to folks that are, that may be worried that they're, getting closer, or maybe even pre-diabetic, or getting into that range, where it's just kind of like, well, you don't have a problem yet, but you might. Well, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I would certainly advise them to get checked out, because what the statistics again say is that most people who are diagnosed with diabetes have had it for 9 to 11 years before they ever know they have it. So in 9 to 11 years, a lot of damage can be done in that time. And so the sooner that you find out, the sooner that you are treated, the sooner you learn how to take care of your diabetes, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. That's what I always tell people. It's like, dying doesn't scare me, but suffering does.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
I could go ahead. I mean, I think I'm ready to go today if it happens. But boy, I tell you what, but losing my eyesight or having circulation problems, or not being able to feel my fingertips or my toes or those kinds of, I think that would be that kind of stuff scares me a lot
scary.
worse. That scares me a lot worse than dying.
Yes.
So I mean, I guess I'd rather go exercising and doing my thing rather than doing it an inch
Doing
at a time.
something fun rather
Yeah.
than being in misery.
Yeah, because I just don't want to. I'd hate to have to kind of suffer that way an inch at a time. And when I see, when I've seen elderly parishioners or things like that who've had to struggle with it, it's very sad for me, because they have so many fewer options.
There is, and I get a little disturbed by the fact sometimes when I have somebody who's got a foot ulcer or having problems with neuropathy, and or maybe even gangrene, that because they've lost circulation, and knowing that they're probably going to lose that
Sure.
foot or leg, and then the other piece of that, knowing that the statistics say that within 5 years of the first amputation comes another. And so it's like, I always tell my patients, I know I get really preachy about feet, but they're the only ones you have. You got to keep them.
Yeah.
So do what you can to do that.
Yeah.
So
We got about a minute left. So
Okay.
what would be your word to the wise out there for everybody who's watching as the diabetes educator? Here's your 30-second stump speech.
Oh boy. Well, I would say be careful with sweets. We live in the land of plenty, and we have lots and lots of goodies out there to eat, and many of them are carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are the foods that really can affect our blood glucose levels. And so try and be careful about eating sweets, and probably the big thing is drinking sugar sweetened beverages.
Yeah.
That's really a huge culprit in raising blood glucose levels.
All right, you've heard it from the educator first, okay? So it's not that anybody can't have any of it. I had to learn that, but we got to be careful about what we do and not too much. Too much of a good thing can get any of us.
Yeah, all things in moderation.
We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute.
You can't start living until you're healthy. My name is JT Amos. Basically, if there's food inside of this hospital, I'm responsible for it. At 332 pounds, I would always order the biggest meal so I could feel full at the end of it. Since I'm an executive chef, it's about my relationship with food. I'm gonna try that, and then I'm gonna try it again, and I'm gonna try it again, and I'm gonna try it again. Now I try it because it's part of the job, and then I let it go. I've always been a very physical person, never let my weight get in my way, but I would suffer the next day, and I would suffer that night because I'd be in just so much pain, my legs would hurt. Now I can do 2 or 3 days in a row and not really hurt. I play with my 5-year-old daughter, we go ride roller coasters, we go do things now. A journey is what it was. I chose Mercy for the bariatric surgery because I want somebody to be with me through a lifetime. So if I am going off the rails for them to go, JT, you need to come back up, look at what you're doing. And everything just goes into place. And it's truly, you're a better person.
Well, I hope you let me put my preacher hat on for just a second. But I do think that one of the things that any of us, of people of goodwill, or any of us who have a faith background, believe that somehow one of the great gifts that we're given is life and these precious bodies of ours. And how do we take care of those things? I do think that nobody wants to see another human being suffer, and I don't want any of you out there to suffer either. So we need to take care of ourselves, and one of those things would be taking care of ourselves, especially in terms of the growing epidemic that we have of diabetes, of too much blood sugar. Our bodies are not able to process it all and help us to continue to live healthy lives. So we've talked about screening, we've talked about care for ourselves, we've talked about making sure that we follow some reasonable goals and trying to set them. Let's just take good care of ourselves and each other, and God will bless us through it all. So I hope you have a great week. Come back and join us again next week for another episode of Faith in Our Hometown. God bless. Have a good Sunday.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.